Hi, I'm Will from Link, and in this video I'll be taking you through the WIP movement report in Link Reporting. Let's take a look together. This is the WIP movement report. Now the WIP movement report is the base report for the rest of Link Reporting. So the logic you see in here is the starting point for every other report you see in the system. Now the reason we'd use the WIP movement report is primarily to reduce our work in progress. Now by default the report runs for the current month and is grouped by job manager and then by job info. And the reason we run it by current month is because we want to know what our current as at right now WIP balance is, and we want to know the job manager that's holding onto the WIP and also what other jobs that they have WIP on. So let's hit run to check this report out. So on the left hand side we have our job managers, and we can expand them to see a breakdown of all the jobs that they are working on. So what we have here is our opening work in progress. That's the unbilled time and cost that exists at the start of the period, less any interim invoices against that balance. We have the amount of time that's been added to these jobs within the month. We have our disbursements added, and then how much we've invoiced this month. Now our invoices are represented as a negative value because invoices reduce our work in progress, whereas time and disbursements increase it. We then have our net write-ups, and a write-off is represented as a negative value, and a positive value would be a write-up. And finally we have our closing work in progress. Now what's beautiful about this is a formula that we can add from left to right. So if we take our opening work in progress, we add our time and add our disbursements, subtract what we've invoiced, and then we add or subtract based on the positive or negative sign our net write-ups, we arrive at our closing WIP value. And this is the formula that underpins the rest of Link Reporting. So a great way to run this report is to sort by closing work in progress. So we can see here that Bruce Banger is carrying the highest WIP balance, followed by Johnny Joseph. So let's look at Johnny Joseph. Here we can see that not only have we sorted the report by closing WIP from our first level grouping being the job managers, but it's also applied to that next level of grouping being the actual jobs. So the job with the highest WIP balance is this first one here, the Hannah's Hot Dogs Limited, with over $5,000 of work in progress. So what we're generally looking for here is jobs that have a high WIP balance with very little time put to them in the period. So as we're only 5 days into this month, another great way to run this report is by looking at a longer period. So right now we're looking at current month, but we may want to look at last month to date. Sort the report again, and look back at Johnny Joseph. Now the time added is showing us all the time entered from the start of last month, which gives us a wider picture to see how much time is going on these jobs. The jobs of biggest concern here, the ones that have had very little time entered, but even more concerning, the jobs that have not been touched since before the start of last month. We can see here that Larry's Lawn Feeders Limited and Mrs. Sullivan Limited both have had no time entered since before the 1st of November and are both carrying reasonably high WIP balances. To investigate this further, we can click into any of these values. This gives us a timesheet drill down grouped by job. We may want to change our grouping to staff, which changes our grouping to see the person that's worked on the job. It looks like both Benny and Greg have been working on this job, and the most recent timesheet was back in September. Let's jump back into the report. So here we're getting some really granular detail about how our WIP is aging and which WIP balances we need to reduce. There are some fields we aren't currently showing on this report, so let's check these out. Here we can get a breakdown of our write-ups and our write-offs, and we can also include WIP change, which looks at how much the WIP has changed throughout this period that we're reporting on. We can add these by simply checking them and then hitting save. Another great way to run this report is by job state. This allows us to see if there's a stage that our jobs are getting held up. We can see here that we've got $41,000 of WIP sitting at director sign-off, and more of a concern, we have $177,000 of WIP after the tax return is filed. We really need to invoice these jobs. You can also see here that we've got $49,000 sitting in our archive. This is a huge concern because these are jobs that have been put into our archive, but we haven't finished our invoicing on them. You want to review this on a regular basis to make sure that all jobs are getting invoiced and nothing's getting missed. As you can see, some of these jobs are of quite high value. We've either forgotten to invoice them or we haven't successfully done our WIP wash-up. Either way, we need to go and investigate why we've got WIP on completed jobs, because this should never happen. Filters are also a really powerful part of the WIP movement report. We can filter the report with any of these options here. Advanced users get really good at combining groupings with filters to get some very detailed information about your work in progress. A great filter to use is task name. Check this one out. I want to know how much WIP is sitting on my general queries, as this is a dumping ground for a lot of my team. I'm going to change my groupings back to job manager and then hit run. Then sort the report by closing WIP. Here we can see Johnny Joseph is currently holding $36,000 of WIP to general queries. This is a big concern for us because we know most of our job managers aren't very good at invoicing this task. This is a great opportunity to come up with a bit of a plan about how we can reduce the work in progress on general queries. In total, we have $77,000 of unbilled time here. The more you use the WIP movement report, the better you're going to get at finding the information you need. Once you find a great report, you can save it, you can export it, or even better, you can schedule this report to be sent on a recurring basis. Just give the report a name, enter all the email addresses of people you'd like to receive this report, choose a start date, a frequency, and the format you'd like the report to be sent. When you schedule this report, consider the fields that you're showing on the report and the sort that you're using, as these things will determine how the report looks when it's received by your team. So I hope that answers all of your questions. Now, if there's anything further you would like help with, in the menu hit help and then chat with support to speak to someone from our support team.